Something that I've seen quite heavily in our space, and I've seen you transition away from it, is destination addiction, particularly in the real estate industry. What's been your experience with being based in Sydney, working in real estate, then transitioning to a lifestyle and a business model which serves you rather than you serve it?
Like I was having this conversation recently with someone, like 5 years ago, even 6 years ago, if you had asked me, could I see myself leaving Sydney, like the East? Like, no way. Like leaving it, like escaping it and living somewhere else. Like going overseas and travelling, of course, but just like living somewhere within New South Wales as an example, like no way. Fast forward now, like obviously we're in Byron. Like, dude, I can't go back to the city. I'll go back and visit family, but the lifestyle's so good. And so to answer your question though, I make decisions around my lifestyle now, not around the business. So just like, to give you an example, like people might live in Potts Point so they can walk to the city, to their office. They make decisions around their career, their professional life. And so a lot of the decisions I make are now around my lifestyle. Like, how's it going to impact my lifestyle? This like if I'm looking at a new biz op, like a business opportunity, like for example, I'm assessing something now to become a shareholder in a company and look into that. And so I have to assess my time commitment and what's going to happen, because how's that going to impact my lifestyle?
Yeah, wow. So it sounds like you've really shifted from creating a routine which optimizes you to be obsessed with work versus now it sounds like you're switching to how do I create a vehicle which gives me the capacity to fund me having more free time.
Yeah, effectively. But getting back to obsessed with work. So I used to be super obsessed with work, like 7 days. Like I'd work 7 days. That's all I thought about. Thought about it over family, thought about it over friends. I was so identified with work. Like work became my life primarily because I was insecure. So I wanted to succeed in business to like break through that insecurity. But ironically, I'm doing way better now, and I do way better in terms, whatever you, like way better, what does that mean? Like cash in bank, portfolio of assets, etc. I'm doing way better now, and I have a lot more time. So I'm not working 7 days. And so you could argue the point like LeBron James, like to be that good, you've got to work your ass off and you probably won't have much of a life. Like there's definitely an argument for that and a good debate. But I think having a business is different. Like LeBron is LeBron, but if you own a business, like management is the art of getting things done through other people. So if you run a business, you can get your business to operate at a very optimal level and you can get back your time, I believe.
And so you were running a business back in Sydney, Cohen Handler. What prevented you from staying in that vehicle versus now transitioning to BAI? Okay, put it this way. Could you still, what you've just told me now, could you insert those practices back in Cohen Handler, or do you feel you needed that transition for you to now be aware to manage other people?
Okay, so Cohen Handler is a service-based model. Buyers Age Institute, BAI, what I'm running now as one of my businesses, that's like what I call like a one-to-many model. It's like a product model. So I sell products. And so they are two different models in my opinion. So for example, BAI can be run remotely. I don't need to be in an office. My team are all remote. I've got some overseas. They're all based around Australia. I haven't met a lot of them. I haven't met a lot of them. So it's a very different style of business model. There's obviously, I think, like leadership practices that I cultivated at Cohen Handler that I've been able to bring into BAI, and a lot of mistakes I made building a startup like we did at CH and then go through that period of running that company over a decade. A lot of mistakes I made that I was able to bring that awareness into BAI. So I'd say it's the reverse. I was able to bring a lot of interesting information into BAI. However, I've now been able to optimize my knowledge base and my skill set a lot in BAI with just understanding what people do in the education space around the world. Like to give you an example, like there's some people that I know in the US that do like 80 mil USD a year. They're like 31.
What?
In education, just selling courses. They've just got a basic website. Some of them have a landing page as a website, no office. And so the education space that I'm in now, it's obviously very diverse, but
Wow.
I've learned a lot just around how people build these remarkable businesses, and obviously you've got to work hard, but you can get back a lot of time because you're selling a product and it's one to many. So one to many means, you create your product and then you sell it many times. And then if you've got a team behind you, like operationally, and then you've got your sales team, marketing team, finance, all that stuff set up, it can run very efficiently, like very, very efficiently.
Wow, like almost autonomously, where you physically don't need to do as much as opposed to being on the tools as a buyer's agent.
Yeah. I mean, if that's what suits you. Like some people love being on the ground as a buyer's agent. They love working that 6 or 7 days. They love the client interface. They really enjoy that. I like business. I love business. I love creating new ideas. I like executing on them. I like growing. And I prefer not to be client interfacing every day. But rather like more so like thinking strategically and executing on vision and like pulling strings and supporting people and growing people and running it like that. So I can surf heaps and we've talked about this previously, like my lifestyle is super important, how I live and and the choices I can make. So if I was to be seeing clients all day and be in meetings all day, it just doesn't work for me.
Do you reckon we can touch on your lifestyle at the moment? Because something that I want to unpack, not only for myself, but I think a lot of listeners can get value out of. How does your lifestyle run at the moment with the business you've been able to create?
How does it start?
Yeah, tell me a bit about the routine, your flexibilities and how that looks for you at the moment.
Okay. Today I should have surfed. Rookie, I made a mistake, I didn't go. So usually I will surf in the morning, but typically I get up at around, I'd say average 4:30.
Yep.
I'll lie on what's called a PEMF mat, a pulse electromagnetic field mat. And it increases your blood circulation, alkalizes your body. It's like this pulse that goes through your body. And so it can be quite strong. And so you can set it to a setting that is either harsh or non-harsh, but I lie on that for 12 minutes in the morning. It feels good. Then I'll typically go to the gym and do the rowing machine. I do rowing machine for about 9 minutes. Typically do about 2,000 meters on the rowing machine.
2,000?
Yeah. Hugh Jackman, I heard him on a podcast and he said he used to do 2,000 3 or 4 times a week in 8 minutes. I can't do 8 minutes. I mean, I probably could, but I do it in 9 because it works out like a large part of your muscle groups. Very effective, very efficient again. So I can do that in 9 minutes and work out like 90% of my body.
Wow.
So I do that. Then I'll do a bit of calisthenics, like, just push-ups, chin-ups, dips, and then I'm out. If I'm not surfing after that, which I did this morning, I didn't surf, I then go to the beach, ground myself, and go for a swim. I swim every day. Every day in winter, every day in summer, I swim every day. Like not laps, I get in the ocean.
Get in the ocean. Almost like your version of the ice bath.
Yeah. Some days I'll do a hot and cold, like sauna and ice, but
Yep.
I typically do that like every 2 days. So I didn't do it today, I did it yesterday, but that will be throughout the day. I'll do that throughout the day, like hot and cold. And then every day I do oxygen therapy. So I have an oxygen mask and run on a machine. It's called adaptive contrast, where you deprive yourself of oxygen, like you were if you were like at 11,000 feet.
Wow.
And then increase the level of oxygen. And so you're running whilst you're depriving yourself, and then you're flicking a switch and you're increasing oxygen. And then I'll do red light, infrared light. So those red light panels, I stand in front of them as well. So I incorporate all that throughout the day at different times. That's what and then I also sometimes do hyperbaric oxygen chamber when you I sit inside a chamber, and you increase the air pressure and you just breathe. It's very you put a laptop in there and just do your own shit.
Yeah, right. So it's flexible inside the chambers to do things.
Yeah, they've got like the one that I go to. Like you can be on your phone or bring a computer in, or like I sit there and just chill. But you can get work done.
Yeah, wow. And so what's a typical work day or length look like for you at the moment?
It depends. At the moment, I'd say if I was to calculate hours, it'd be around maybe 11 to 13 hours in the week.
Really?
Yeah. It used to be less than that.
So you can pull off 11 to 13 hours a week earning more than what you were at, say, CH.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Wow.
And I've got multiple businesses, so I mean, I'm involved in other businesses as well. Non-operationally, I've invested in companies. I'm also been granted equity in some companies that I participate as well in a strategic level. I've also got coaching business and a consulting business. So I've got other businesses as well, but I've set everything up that they work primarily as a group of companies. It works independently outside of me.
So most of your ventures can operate and grow without you needing to really be there full time.
Yeah, that's how I make my decisions. Because as I said earlier, like if I had to jump into something like hardcore, like a new startup, it would eat up too much of my time. And I don't want that. You know what I mean? If it was super meaningful, like the purpose of the company and whatever I was kind of assessing, and maybe I'd reconsider it if I really wanted to like jump in because it was like I was passionate about the business venture. But at the moment, like nothing's that too exciting to give up my lifestyle.
Yeah, wow. So what would you then, how would you define success for yourself?
Well, if I look back, success used to be like cash in bank.
Yeah.
Like what you're worth, was net worth. But I kind of look now and think, well, let's just say you're a high-powered CEO. Let's say you're earning 20 mil a year and you can't really control your calendar. Like I don't see that as successful, personally. Because I think we're on this planet for a limited time. Like a lot of us don't think about mortality. We just think that we're going to keep living. And we think going away twice a year is like the best. Like that's just, you're killing it. You go away twice a year, you do Europe mid-year, you go away end of year, maybe skiing, and your life's set, then you go back into work. And then you do that maybe to your 55, 60. I don't see that personally as me. Like for me, like I want to be able to enjoy every day. Like I just want to really be able to have a nourishing day and not have to wait mid-year for me, right? So success for me is around agency, having like autonomy. When I mean agency, I mean control, flexibility, being able to do what you want when you want, just whenever. So that to me is how I define success.
So being able to do what you want when you want. And do you feel people can start living the version of success you outlined before they've built a cash base or some level of equity where they can start to pull back their time? Or do you feel they need to build a cash base first before they start transitioning to living more balanced approach?
It's a hard one. I mean, in education, I've seen a lot of people who you could classify net worth not strong at all, very weak, who I've seen build over my time and being in this space for 5 years, build insanely large businesses, like insane. And they were nothing before in the sense of like they hadn't achieved success, which is also one of the issues with education is you have these people who sell shit who they become successful from selling their shit, but they weren't successful before. So that is a problem that I've seen a lot. But so I think you can really, I don't think you need to start something or be successful or have a strong cash reserve. I interviewed, this is a bit off topic in terms of what you asked, but I interviewed a guy recently who came through my program at BAI. His name's Goose McGrath from Dashdot.
Yeah, I've seen.
We had a chat, right? Former drug addict, like was on the verge of dying. I remember when I spoke to him, because at the beginning of BAI, like I used to speak to all the prospects, right, on the phones, because I wanted to understand the issues, the objections, and understand, I was teething out a new model, right, a new product. I just wanted to learn about it. So I was on the phone doing the sales calls. So initially, I forget for how long, maybe the first 4 months. I remember speaking to him, right? Like I think I was either in the airport in Singapore or I was going to Singapore, but I spoke to him and his partner Gabby, and he corrected me when I spoke to him about this, because he was basically they were broke when they spoke to me. He told me like they had to borrow the money to do my program, and I allowed them to do it over 12 months. Apparently, I forget. So he actually told me on an interview. He goes, "Man, I was broke."
Wow.
So he was broke. Fast forward now, I think it's been 4 years. His business, I think, is doing over 11 million revenue.
11 million.
11 million. His whole business, in order to work at his company, you've got to be remote. You can't be in an office. So if you want to be in an office, you can't work at his company. So he's built his business around lifestyle. Some of the people that work for his company, like they travel around Australia in a caravan, as an example. Like some of them live in Bali. Some of them live in New Zealand. And so he's actually built this business around lifestyle to support his workers. But getting back to, I was digressing a bit.
No, this is good.
But he was basically broke. Right?
Yeah.
He was broke. Actually, he was broke. He was broke when he started my program. He had to borrow the money to do my course, right? Had nothing. One of his business ventures before that had went sour. So track record really wasn't there. And then executed in the BA space. And, he's doing a lot more than most people in revenue.
Yeah.
Doing a lot more. And I think he'll be on track next FY. Oh, maybe not next FY. I think he'll be on track next calendar year. Just looking at some numbers and talking to him around some things. He'll be doing 20 mil plus. I think next calendar year he'll do over 20 mil.
How are the margins in that type of arrangement where it's more remote, but for something like what he's building with a big revenue number, what type of margins could you expect?
It's a good question. I don't know. I haven't looked at his P&L, right? But in the BA space, I mean, you've been a buyer's agent. So it's high, and you are a buyer's agent. You don't look. You're in a singlet now. You're at what are you going before having a swim? You're very Byron style now.
I'm very Byron. We're living the dream.
Okay. I see some people doing crazy net profits in the BA space. Let me pull it back in. Actually, okay, let me answer the question. What I think is cool about the buyer's agent sector is this: if I wanted to be a real estate agent today in Byron, I'm up against Will Phillips at McGrath, Nick Dunn, his partner. I'm up against James McCowan at Sotheby's. I'm up against all these. I could name all the groups that have. So Ben Handler, they're like, who the fuck's he? No one. Vendors might not be as precious as the East in Sydney, but I'm up against people who've been knocking on their doors for a long time or who are a lot more experienced than I am as a selling agent. And so it's very hard for a selling agent to start their own business. Under Ben Handler, real estate agent, as an example. The beautiful thing about the buyer's agent space, and you're a classic example, is that you can start a buyer's agent business, Daniel Beardall, and when you go meet a prospect today, they're not comparing you to established brands. They're not waking up in the morning thinking these are the established brands like Rain and Horn and Ray White and McGrath, etc. And so the beautiful thing about the BA space is you can start a business and you can run with speed and you can have very fucking high profit. So getting back to your question, I see some businesses running at 90% profit margins, net profit.
Wow.
Doing $1 million a year.
Doing $1 million a year.
Doing $1 million a year. Yeah. I've seen some of them at around 1.5, doing 90% net profit. So if you look at some of these agents who are doing 3 mil and they're split, so that's just one. And then, but getting back to these larger companies, right? Some of these BA companies, right? They're growing really quick. I actually don't know. I would say their profits would vary between, I'd say 30 to 60%. 30 to 60%. Which 30 is still good for a business. Like if you ask an accountant, is 30% net. Like they look at all their portfolio of clients across different industries. I think if you look on Google around the average net profit for companies in Australia, I reckon it'd be like 11% or something. I reckon it'd be between 9 and 11%.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's what I know from my experience, one of the beautiful things is that if I want to be on the tools, I can make 100% profit with zero expenses, just using a telephone and calling and building relationships with referral partners, which to me was just blew my mind. The amount of money I made this year in a short period of time, comparing to someone like Kevin, who I co-host of the podcast. For him to have the same level of profit, he has to do 5 deals to equal my 1 at times. And so I see him work towards 3 mil GCI, but when you look at the net profit versus what I can do and still have a lifestyle, it's like, I don't know if the LeBron James model is the model to be.
And you can outsource a lot of your stuff as well.
And I can. I've got people working for me right now while I do this podcast.
Yeah, doing deals for you.
And especially for the investment side, the owner-occupier as well. I feel like the owner-occupier, you definitely need an area specialist to help with that confidence. But the investors is a huge market to really create a cash flow working remote, I believe.
I think a lot of real estate agents, like I've obviously been in the BA space since 2009.
That's crazy.
Then I wasn't that familiar with these investment models that I've seen operate in the last 4 years. I wasn't exposed to them when I was running CH. So I've learned a lot as well around how these models operate. And I don't think many real estate agents or people in the real estate realm in general quite understand some of the numbers these guys do. Seriously. Like because I've got over 3,000 students now, and I see a lot. Like I see a lot of people do $1 million in their first year. Like on 90% profit in their first year. By the way, they could have been like some of these guys, they're really passionate about investing. Some of them might quite have large portfolios. First year, bang. Like you said, it's very low operating expenses. P&L is very healthy. It's a very exciting space, and how you can get the business, especially the investment model, to run outside of you independently, so you can have get time back if that's important to you. Some people that they love the hustle, which is sick. I used to do that. They love it. But if you're someone who kind of wants...
What was the turning... Sorry to interrupt. What changed your perspective from the hustle to a different approach, which is more lifestyle? And then we'll come back to that. Sorry to interrupt.
There was a few turning points. First is when I started BAI, I was at Cohen Handler still. So BAI was founded when I was at CH. And when I got a taste for that one-to-many model, I was like, hey, I can create a product and I can sell it. Like, I think the first month I forget how many times I sold it. Could have been like 6 or 7 times. I was like, fuck, this is exciting.
Because what's a rough product fee? Just,
$8 grand.
$8,000.
Yeah. Plus there's additional coaching and stuff, that other programs that we sell. But when I got a taste for that, it made me realise and open my lens, my aperture lens, that hey, I can live a bit differently. Like I can run a business differently. Like I can operate a bit differently. So that was probably one key pivotal turning point. It was like a mindset shift, because as a buyer's agent running a company, you're very stuck in your shell. Sure, you talk to other business owners and learn stuff, but I was seeing it through a certain lens. And then after that, I was just kind of looking at the way I was living, which was, from the outside you could think it was awesome. But every day I was just in an office. And if you looked at my scorecard and looked at business, and then the other scorecard was building a life, the scorecard of building a business was massive, very full, overflowing, but building a life was empty. And so I looked at that and thought, I'm not here for a long time. I need to change that. And that's when I started to move up north. I went to the Northern Beaches first. That was the first stop. lifestyle change and was like, oh my God, it's quieter here. And then got up to Byron.
What were some of the negative ripple effects with having 0 in the life bucket?
I think like trying to maintain a positive mindset is difficult. You know, the people who always tell you, look at them, hey, how are you? Always fucking great. Like a lot of it's a load of shit. It's like Instagram and Facebook. Everyone's posting the good things. Like no one's posting the bad things. So it's very artificial. I think a lot of people don't have awareness just around that. They're so used to just looking at the social and seeing the positivity, so used to seeing people and people just saying how good they are. So it's very artificial. So I think you've got to, for me, like you have to, it's like you got to floss your mind, you got to floss your brain, you got to work on yourself. Like you go to the gym and work your muscles. You got to work that mental muscle, that mental fitness. Like you got to work at it. Like if you're not working at it and you think it's resilient and it's strong, I think it's bullshit. Right? It's like if you don't go to the gym, you don't work out. Like you know, you're not going to be at that level. And so, I think for me, I just got to a point where I realised that through introspection, that I wasn't that happy.
Did that introspection come facilitated from a third party, or was it internally driven?
It was internally, right? Like, you know, you get the car, then you get the next car, then you get the next car, then you get the fucking watch, then you get the next watch, then you get the next watch. But someone's always got a better watch, more watches. Someone's always got a better car, bigger boat, bigger house. And so it's a vicious cycle. And I went through it, which I'm very, really grateful. And I'm blessed that and not like I don't appreciate nice things now. I do. But I don't depend on them to make me happy. I don't buy it thinking, fuck, it's going to like solve a problem for me. If anything, I think it adds fuel to your fire. And a lot of it, if you peel it back, if you really peel it all back, I think a lot of the time for people, it's like it's feeding insecurity. It's feeding ego. It was for me, but I definitely think it is the case for a lot of people. So I started to care less a lot about all that stuff. Like I couldn't really give a shit. And so my life started to become a lot better. I became a lot happier. And I have to work on it. Like I said, like I have to continue to work on it. Like I don't get up every day thinking that I'm happy as Larry. Then it's like scientifically, like the brain is negative. Like negative thoughts. I always tell you
like 75%, isn't it, or something crazy?
Yeah. So like it's completely negative, and so it takes. I think it takes a lot of work. I don't know. Well, for me, it does.
I agree, and something that I'd love to get your perspective on, which I feel is relevant in my life, is that I like the idea of changing to the lifestyle model and not needing material to fulfill me. But then when it comes down to living this alternative model, how do we still be effective where we are? And one thing you asked me was, what problem are you trying to solve? And I feel sometimes when we go down this path of mindfulness, connectivity, meditation, etc., it can be easy to get caught in the trap of getting lazy or content versus still maintaining a level of effective output. What's been your experience to being able to balance both, where you can still maintain your lifestyle but build success?
That's challenging. I think that's really challenging. First 3 years, like I felt like I was lazy as fuck because like I had all this time back. Things were going really well, heaps profitable, like really profitable things, but I wasn't working every day. Do you know what I mean? My day wasn't stacked with meetings every day. So I felt like, I was like, what the fuck's going wrong? What am I doing? Like, I'm lazy. I'm getting complacent. I'm not productive. My output's not great. And so I think it's really tricky. However, I think what it starts with is you got to define what you want. Like what does a typical day look like for you and what's important for you? So if your typical day, as an example, can comprise of doing activities like hobbies or things that are going to serve you well, right? And you can still bring into that mix of the day some very productive meetings, that are going to lead to very serious output, right? And you can really focus on very high valued meetings or very high valued time commitments that are going to lead to high output, results. And you can achieve those results professionally. I think it's brilliant. I think it's a misconception that you've got to work like 6 days to be successful. I think it's bullshit. Like, and I'm not saying you don't have to work hard, but I see it all the time in the business realm, and I think you can go out there and look at it yourself, like look across different verticals, different industries, and you can see it all the time. Like, you don't need to work all day to deliver high output, and you can integrate and have a balance. But you got to get clear. It's challenging. I struggled with it for like 3 years hard.
And so how have you managed to get clear now? Is there a process you've gone through? Some exercises you do to help get that clarity? Or is it a daily commitment to doing things like your mindfulness practices to get you in a zone where you're present rather than being in your head in this state of fight or flight because your nervous system's hyped up because you're trying to achieve X GCI, and then you're not in this state where you can allow the creative space to come in?
I think for me, I had to get crystal clear on what was important for me in a day, like what was very important for me. And for me, it used to be work throughout the entire day. And then I decided, hey, that wasn't serving me well mentally. And then I was like, hey, I know I can perform at a high level financially and not have to do that. So just having awareness and a realization around that, and then proving and validating that was enough for me. And then when I was able to work that out, I then decided, well, if I'm going to spend previously like maybe 10, 11 hours of a day working my ass off, what I was doing before, why don't I contribute a large portion of that time to doing shit that I really enjoy? Like, why don't I flip the coin a bit? And then work out, what am I happy with net profit? Like, I don't measure revenue as net profit, right? It's all about what you're keeping. So what am I happy with, to answer your question, like, how do you work it out? I was like, what's a net profit figure that I'm happy with, right? And one of my coaches, like, she said that to me. So one of my coaches, Lauren, she coaches people like Hugh Jackman and shit. She's legit, like, she's really good. And she sees this a lot with a lot of her billionaire clients as well, she told me. It's because when you're not crystal clear on not just, like, for example, your net profit, but like what's going to be a figure, like an amount that you're going to be happy with as a total amount to walk away with. So, like, rather than like chasing to go to like 50 mil to 100 to 150 to 200, like, if you could say, hey, at 80 mil, like, I'm good no matter what. Like, I'm just good. So I think it's about getting clear around certain milestones of your financial journey that you need to make, and just not budging. Like, you go to an auction, you say, I'm going to not walk away, if I'm going to go to 4 mil.
Yeah.
4 mil's it. So if you say, hey, I want to do like 4 mil net profit, if you're on track to hitting that and everything's going well, then just do what you got to do during the day and have fun. So I think it's around, and there's a lot of discipline in that. It's very hard. Like, I struggled with that as well. So now I set myself these very clear milestones, and if I'm on track for them and I can then have a joyful day, I'm all good personally with that.
If you're not on track with those milestones, does that mean you have to then flick back into more of a work schedule, or do you still give yourself the permission to enjoy the process and have that lifestyle piece?
There's definitely an allocation of time to problem solve. Yep. So whether it's speaking to experts who can advise me around what I'm doing, I can assess my human capital within the company that I'm working in, like the people. I can look strategically around what's going on. Like, you've got to solve the problem, and so it could mean spending more time in that business to troubleshoot, and that's what you've got to do.
And then, what would be some of the things you would do now inside the life piece that have really started to produce that fulfillment outside of the schedule you're given this morning? Is it filled with holidays? Is it having time with friends and family? What is it? Networking? What would be some things that you could share?
Surfing's a big one. I know surfing's a massive one. Like I think just having a hobby, a sport, something that you really like, that you could like starting the morning off in the water when it's, you know, sunrise is like unbeatable, especially in Byron. Like it's
Incredible.
it's like, it's hard to beat. So, and surfing's very, it's very athletic and, you know, it's strenuous and it's fun, right? So for me, finding a hobby that I love is being good. Animals. So I've got two dogs, 2 cats. Spending time a lot with animals, I think, is a big thing for us, for Rachel and I, like heaps. Like we spend a lot of time with the animals. You can learn a lot from them. We don't have kids, but you can learn a lot, I think, from animals. So they're also like, I see them as teachers.
Teachers.
Yeah, I see them as teachers. Like not obviously like a mentor, but I see them as like a teacher. Like they bring mirrors up for me. Like this morning, we've got a German Shepherd, and she's a puppy. She's 11 months. She's like a working dog. Like she comes from a police breeder and a breeder in Victoria that supplies the military and the police. So she's like a little savage. And
What's her name?
Dakota.
Dakota.
And so she's a bit of a savage. And so I was on the beach this morning as an example, and this dog came up she's heaps protective, like crazy. So she's like, Dakota's sitting about 20 meters away from me. This other dog, this beautiful, like small Groodle or whatever, came up to me and was sitting next to me, and I was playing with it. And she's looking at me, Dakota, and I had no idea this was going to happen. And then the dog kind of ran off, and then Dakota just went at it.
Wow.
What are you doing? Speaking to my owner. And so anyway, I had to rip Dakota off the dog. It was pretty bad, right? It didn't attack it bad, but it was pretty embarrassed. And then she knew I was going to lose it, so she ran off from me. She's very well trained. She ran off. And so I then started losing my temper. I started getting really pissed off. And this is the teaching mode. Like, what about calmness? Like, how do you handle yourself in a stressful situation? And so I think there's a lot of moments like that's just an example this morning, right? Where you can learn a lot from certain, people or things in your environment. So animals, and also gardens. So what we're doing, like we've got a property with 6 acres.
6 acres?
In Byron, yeah. So it's 24,000 squares. And we're building a food forest. So...
Organic?
Organic, of course. So like full food forest. Like right now we've got like a lot of stuff growing, but it's not a food forest yet. We've just got heaps of beds. But so gardening and like interacting with the environment, the land, eating from your land. Like in Sydney, I was living in, I think, Elizabeth Bay, but it was the last stop in the city. Like, I was in a concrete jungle, which is cool. I loved it, for the time I spent there. But now just picking zucchinis, cucumbers, tomatoes off you, like lettuce, beetroot leaves, like all that stuff, and then making a meal and nourishing that garden, watering it, looking after it, harvesting it, like that's powerful.
It's very grounding, isn't it? Well, it sounds like it would be a form of meditation almost. Active meditation.
It works for me. Like some people are like, who are going to listen to this in the city, it's hard to kind of like, if I was listening to this 6 years ago, I'd be like, what the fuck? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but fuck him.
Yeah, like I'll just go to, where was I? Health Nuts in the Cross and just get my cucumbers there, But, Byron's just got, like you're here now, right? Like it's got an incredible environment.
You can feel it, even just driving in. What I loved, and I'd love to hear your perspective, but you have the beach and also land, like a combination of both. And then this sense of just, you can feel the energy is different. So what's your, being here now for some time, how can you describe Byron and its impact on you energetically?
So getting back to your comment around you feel good. So I'm the same, right? And that's why everyone comes here. Not just because it's beautiful. Like you've got Bondi, Bronte, you've got heaps of good, amazing beaches in Sydney, right?
Better girls in Byron.
There's very attractive women here. So basically, I've heard this numerous times that this was a healing centre for Aboriginals back in the day. Women used to give birth here. They used to come to Byron to give birth because it's incredibly healing. It's built on, I believe, like certain crystals and rock formation. So it's very healing. That's why a lot of people, when they come here, they feel amazing. So energetically, I think it's a very powerful place to be around, right? Listen, I love the landscape here. Like you said, you can be at the beach, like you're at Wadigo's having a swim. You can drive into the hinterland and be on like a 150-acre property. Like 10 to 15 minutes, like 150 acres, right? Even 300 acres, you could be within 20 minutes right from town. And so it's very special. And I mean, the food, like the quality of the food, because the soil here is excellent. So that the vegetables, like everything, the quality of food is excellent. Like you see everything, in Sydney made in Byron. Chocolates. People just like literally get a post office box here. It's marketing.
Yeah,
made in Byron. It fucking wasn't made here. But a lot of products are made here because the quality is outstanding. The environment's incredible. So I think just the surf, like I surf right heaps, like the surf's incredible here. Also the people, right? So this is an observation. There's no traffic lights. I love it. You people don't notice it. There's no traffic lights in town. So I didn't notice that for like 5 months. I was like, someone told me, I was like, wow, like that's sick. So like no traffic lights.
Everyone rides bikes around here.
Yeah, everyone rides bikes. Everyone's got pushies, electric bikes.
In a tan.
Yeah, everyone's just chilling. What I love the most though is the people. So growing up in the East, it's quite flashy, right? But you wouldn't know here if someone's worth $500 million or $1. You just don't know. There's no flashiness here, right? I like that. It's unassuming. People don't care about that shit here. I'm sure some people do, but that's not the vibe here. 2, 50% of the people, let's just for argument's sake, to say 50-50. 50% of the people here are always traveling, so they're fucking happy. Like they're stoked. Like heaps of people here right now.
Yeah.
Like from Sydney, you can tell Melbourne, everyone's happy. They're out of the city. They're like listening to birds, not bad traffic. So the majority of people here who are traveling, which is a large majority at all times, are very happy. The locals here I've only been here a short time, haven't lived here a long time, but seem very pleasant. So it's very nice. Like people wave at you a lot in cars here. In Sydney, they tell you to get fucked. They wave at you a lot here.
They pull your signboard out and fuck it off.
Yeah. They'll scratch your car. They'll throw something at you. They'll beep at you. Here, that doesn't happen very often. So also just the quality of the people. It's refreshing for me.
Interesting you touch on that because we often hear in business and in real estate, you are who you surround yourself with. And a lot of people try to optimize for the successful crew, but often that comes with a lack in the lifestyle component, or it's the energy of the group doesn't have the right source, in my opinion. Have you been able to, being in this different environment, does it enable you to still excel materially successfully being here, surrounded by a more relaxed tribe? Yeah,
for sure. There's a lot of, I think in Switzerland, in Zurich, or not Zurich, but in Switzerland, there's certain areas like because the environment in Switzerland's fucking amazing, like beautiful. I actually went to Zurich to see Robin Sharma.
Did you?
I went to a conference.
How was that?
Yeah, I saw him, Steve Wozniak, and like it was insane. So I'm a fan, and I went there to see specifically it was his conference.
He's good.
He's good. He's wise. But there's a lot of Nobel Prize winners who I think either spend time in Switzerland or who are from Switzerland because they surround themselves apparently in a really creative environment, like beautiful.
Yeah, wow.
So to answer your question, it works really well for me. Like it's just I'm heaps creative. There's a lot of space. Really brilliant people here as well. Like you can, like I met a dude here recently. I'll give you an example. This is an example. I'm really good friends with him. I'm seeing him tomorrow morning. He's 58. He's from the US. I'm sure he wouldn't care if I'm saying this. He ran a few companies he's from San Fran. He's an engineer. He ran a few companies growing up. Did reasonably well. Sold them. Then he went traveling. I think in his 30s he sold them, and then he went traveling. And then by about 40, he was not broke, but like he'd spent a lot of his money traveling the world. At 40, he then flew back to the US. He started a company within 3 years, was doing 600 million USD. Right? 600 million.
600 million.
He provided a lot of the technology to the prison systems around inmates, around how to monitor them and collect certain data on them, etc. Anyway, he sold up, had a bit of an experience where he got a bit of a download to sell his company. He was doing a plant ceremony, got a download, sold the company, got told to sell it and start a farm and grow organic stuff. Sold the company 2 weeks later, moved to Byron. You meet people like this. Very, very super like dialed in people, brilliant people, and they're everywhere around here. Like they're everywhere. So if you want to find them, like you said, surrounding yourself with the right people, if you want to build that tribe, that community like I've starting to build of people who are brilliant, you'll find them here. They're everywhere.
Wow.
You just can't notice them. They don't have the shiny teeth and the shoes and the and the watches. Like they'll be fucking driving a ute and they'll be, worth $1 billion.
And you know what's funny? I don't know one real estate professional that's doing 600 million. Unless you maybe do.
No, I mean, listen, I think that the real estate industry is fantastic in terms of some of these real estate agents are brilliant with what they do, like individually what they carry in terms of the revenue and also the profit some of these guys do. I think it's inspiring. Like I think there's some very large numbers that they generate. I think it's really impressive. You could see this. You could see a company generating 50 million. Their net profit might be 2. You might see a real estate agent does 5 who has a high net profit. So I think that it just comes down to like the makeup of what you want to do. Like some people are very much just want to hustle, they want to grind, they want to be the face, they want to be in control. If they are not at work, they don't make money and they're okay with that. Like they like that. That system works for them. Some people doesn't work for them, right? And so I think you just got to be doing something you genuinely love, you care about, and you're fulfilled. The real estate industry, though, is hard to get a temp check on how fulfilled people are, though. It's a hard one because, especially where we are, or where we were, or where I was, especially in Sydney, like it's hard to get a temp check on how happy people are. No one wants to talk about it.
It is, and from my experience, you can get caught in the feeling fulfilled in the fact that you've got heaps of momentum in the success you're acquiring. And is that, sometimes you can mistake momentum for fulfillment. I've experienced personally.
100%. Yeah, like that's a dirty trap that I think working hard. Like I think working hard's a fucking given. Like you want to be excellent. You want to be an elite at what you do. You want to be the top one. You got to work fucking hard. Like that's just a given. Like I don't even know why that's
like
even
tomato and tomato sauce.
Yeah, I don't even like why that's even discussed. Do you know what I mean? Like, and so I think some people are born, with more talent, but skill can be developed, right? I believe skill can be developed if you got the grit, you got the discipline, the diligence. You can build the skill. So I think once you work hard and you can get a formula in place, you then need to work out what you then want to create. And if you no longer want to be that person, for example, that's having to work day to day in order to generate revenue, to feed yourself, to build wealth, then you need to reconsider potentially what you want to do. You might need to diversify your funds into high-performing assets, or invest in funds, or own equity of businesses and do things in order to potentially get you out of that. Or you need to pivot career, or you need to look at your existing infrastructure of your business and think about how can you build it where you can become redundant, potentially. So there's all these options, but a lot of people, they want the control. The ego is very strong. So I just think it all comes down to choice. Like, I think it's cool. Everyone just does what they want to do, and there's no judgment. I think just you got to be just happy and and just growing and getting better.
Yeah, I think that's a big part, is not judging yourself on your journey in comparison to others, and then likewise not judging what others choose to do, because it's easy to get caught in that.
That's another challenging part. I think a comparison game is very tricky, very dirty, and typically can be your biggest distraction because you lose focus. And as an entrepreneur, like whether you're a buyer's agent, a selling agent, or you're running a company, whatever you're doing, you are deemed, let's say, as an entrepreneur. Your focus, your lack of focus, will bury you before your competition.
Your lack of focus will bury you before your competition.
Will outperform you. Yeah. So people are scared that you, as an agent who's competing against me, you're going to beat me. But if I'm not focused day to day because I'm thinking about you and all the other people, my lack of focus is what's going to outperform me. It's actually not you. It's my lack of focus, because I can't control you.
Yeah.
I can control my level of distraction, my level of focus, my level of optimization. I can control that. And so I think lack of focus in general, I think, is what buries most people before their competition takes them out.
Have you implemented anything into your structure to help with focus?
I've tried heaps of shit. Like, another thing I have to work really strong on to stay focused, especially like living here, because it's pretty chilled.
Yeah, the sun's out.
Yeah.
Let's go for a swim.
Yeah, it's
Do
hard.
a podcast in a singlet.
Yeah. And so, and we've got friends always staying with us, like, coming to I've got friends here at the moment, right, that are, from Sydney with their kid and stuff. So we're gonna,
Oh, wow.
we're gonna eat after, and so like and for the last 4 weeks, I've had guests here from like from California, from heaps of different places, just staying with us. So, it requires a lot of focus for me, right, to be productive. And so, getting back to your question, the way that I structure my day in terms of activities, like work-related activities, is I don't just pin meetings in the diary for the sake of it. I used to be the yes person. Yep. Becomes really, really expensive. Like, really expensive for me, right? And so I'm very selective what I put in the diary. Like, for example, my accountant called me before this, and I wanted to do nothing else this week because I'm going away on Saturday. I'm like, there's nothing else going in the diary this week at all. But my accountant called me before and said, hey, Ben, I want to run through your F23s and just talk through some strategy around tax and just like talk through some things. And I was like, hey, I'd like to do that before the end of the year. Like, that's important to me. Like, I want to take some time to hear what he has to say, make some decisions potentially over the break, and think about it so I can come back next year prepared. So that went into the diary. And so I'm just selective what I put in there, who I meet with, right? And so what it does is, when I see my day, for example, tomorrow, which I've already looked at, I'm kind of psyched to turn up to them. I'm like, fuck yeah. Like, I saw, there's 2 specific meetings that I looked at this morning for tomorrow. I'm like, sick. Like, I'm amped for this. Like, because a lot of people, because they're yes people that I used to be like, there's so much garbage in the diary. You're just like, fuck. Like, oh my God. And then you get resentful with yourself, the person, because it's in there. But you got to take ownership, and you're like, hey, you put it in there. Like, the dinosaur didn't throw it in your diary. So, and it's a hard one, because if you're a real estate agent, obviously you're trying to drum up as many meetings as possible, get in front of as many vendors. You're a buyer's agent, as many buyer prospects as you can, and so you can look at it through different lenses. But ultimately, I think time management's important, and quality of time, and creating space when you can in your diary. Like, Jeff Weiner from LinkedIn used to be the CEO. He was my favorite CEO, like favorite as a leader.
Jeff Weiner.
Yeah, you can look him up. Like, just look. He was remarkable, I thought, for me. Like, very compassionate leader, super wise. Like, If you hear him speak, you see what I mean, right? He did an interview with Oprah as well. Like he's brilliant. He grew. I think he started LinkedIn when there was like 4,000 and grew it to like, I don't know, 30 or 40,000 staff.
Wow.
Anyway, where I'm getting at. I think he was running 30,000 staff across the world. He was renowned for creating a lot of space in his diary. He hated meetings all day. And you can imagine, like, they're a public company, man. Like, people want to talk to that guy every second of the day. Like, not every minute, like every second, people want his time, right? Like shareholders or like senior management or whoever. Like, so, but he was renowned and ruthless. And he wrote a LinkedIn, you can find it on LinkedIn about his calendar. There's a piece on it where he talks about how he created a lot of space in his diary where there's no meetings in there because that allowed him to be creative, think strategically. He then got better results. I heard him talk about it as well. He said the more space he had in his diary, which went against the norm of a CEO of his caliber, the better results he got.
Yeah, wow.
Interesting. Eh?
Very interesting. It sounds similar to the Robin Sharma plan of you only really need 5 hours of effective focus output per day, and the rest you just want to be in a creative zone where you can allow space. This is something that I've experienced personally is I get better results, or when I allow my calendar to have space to, when you want to create space to allow new opportunities to come in, and then you have the ability to assess them without being in a state where you're consumed by the next task or outcome with the business. If that makes sense.
Kinda.
So when I create space in my calendar to chill out or what have you, it often gives, it allows me then for when another opportunity comes to assess that opportunity and not be distracted by the 10 hours of work I've got in that day.
100%. Yeah, I understand. And I agree. I think it comes down to like presence, intense presence. Like if you're not, and I struggle with this as well heaps. Like lately I've been like I lost my hat today. Like, and I was just like, fuck, where did I put it? Like, can't remember. Must have lost it yesterday. I've lost the same hat before. So I put another one just because I'm just distracted mentally, right? Clearly like distracted. So there's so many opportunities. Like the world's so opportunistic. Like that story I gave you about that guy who was basically broke and then started a company, and I think 3 or 4 years later was doing 600 million USD, right? A year. There's so many opportunities that just are around us. But I think that some of us, not only we're not present, we're quite closed off. Because the security blanket, like I'm a buyer's agent and that's what I'm going to be for the rest of my life. And that's what I just think I need to be. And you're in a concrete jungle like that because that's what you have to do. You think you have to do that. Maybe because things are going remarkably well, or maybe you think that's your skill set. But then there's like a dude who's at the park who's got a dog who could be that next opportunity. That could be potentially your next co-founder, or that could have an idea that they want to discuss with you that then could be the biggest venture of your life as to maybe why you're actually born. Because I think that we're all put on this planet to serve in a certain way. Like we were all given certain talents, certain knowledge base, certain skill sets to deliver and perform, I believe, right? And so I think a lot of people, the reason why they're quite miserable, right? My perception, again, my perspective, why people, and mental illness is, you can just look at mental illness is so large, like there's a fucking problem, right? And I think a big reason as to why people are so unhappy is because they're not living their life with purpose, with what they're... So you're either sleeping for the majority of your life or working. Both, doing both, right? Comprising. So I think if you're sleeping, right? You should be restful. And if you're not sleeping and you're working, if you're not like super inspired, like super inspired by what you're doing and not solving big problems and like super passionate, there's a high chance you're not going to be happy. And there's a high chance you weren't put on this planet to do that. Like there's a high chance you weren't supposed to do that. And so I think when it's out of alignment, it causes a lot of problems. Like, you know, you just want to like buy shit potentially to make yourself happy, spend money on shit. But then you spend it and then you're happy with that dopamine for like 10 minutes or a day or a week, and then you're unhappy again. So getting to my point is that if you are present and open to receive these new ideas and potentially look at different opportunities, there could be something massive, like that's just next to you, right? And I think that all comes down to awareness, just like about being aware that, hey, there might be a better opportunity for you, and maybe don't close yourself off to just what you're doing. Oh no, that's just a perspective that I've got, because I'm very open like that. Like I'm always, like I'm not a very social guy, so I don't talk to a lot of people. I'm very, very private, very reserved, very, very reserved. But I'm very aware that, hey, like there could be someone around me that's going to bring something to life for me, or that I may want to participate in, or that may spark my interest. So I'm always very curious, super curious around people and what they're doing and why they're doing it and their viewpoints on things.
Do you feel you're operating from inspired action now? And if so, how do you get to that state?
Like, man, I'm in a stage in my life where I'm looking for new opportunity. Like I'm looking for a new venture that's like very impactful, like more than what I'm doing now. Don't know what it is. So when I was talking to you earlier about inviting shit in, like I'm going through that. Like my ears and eyes are open, just like observing and just seeing, hey, what's out there, right? Am I inspired with what I'm doing now? Yeah. Like that goose story, like seeing a guy come into my organization who was a drug addict or former drug addict, broke, he made Fast 100 in AFR. It was announced like a week ago. He was like number 12 in the Fast 100 in the Australian Financial Review, right? For fastest growing companies. Like when I see shit like that, I'm like, I love that. Like I love that. And I see so many successful stories all the time in BAI as an example of seeing what people, how they're transforming their lives. Like not just making money, like they're getting out of a shit IT consultant job. They were good at it, drained their life. I saw a guy post in my group the other day, like he got out of IT and now his wife got out of her job and she's joined him because the business is growing so much. And so they're both working together. Wow. It's compatible. They're both out of employment. Like, but I'm a bit numb to that now because I've seen so much of it as well.
And true to that, it's somebody else's result.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But I love seeing that stuff as well. Like I'm not like, I love seeing people win. Like I don't sit there and get resentful, but like I get what you're saying. It's like, it's not my journey. It's their journey, which I kind of facilitated. And that's what I do at BAI. Hey, like people think, oh, I'm just creating buyers. No. Like it wasn't designed just for that. I came from a 9 to 5. I worked corporate. I got a taste of it. I worked for highly intelligent people. I learned a lot. I'm really grateful. I was surrounded by brilliant, brilliant people at a company called Charter Hall, like super, like lucky, grateful. But very quickly I was like, hey, I'm not going to get paid for what I'm worth. Number one. Number two is like, I get a holiday once a year. Fuck that. Like, no, seriously, I'm like I was just like, no, like this type of like wearing a suit and tie, wearing a mask during the day, like obviously not literally, but having to put on a mask, the corporate mask. Nah. So I got out of that, started a company, winged it, right? Winged it. When I say winged it, like I'd never worked in sales, I'd never run a business, I didn't come from traditional real estate. So you could say, and then I was entering into the buyer's agent sector, which no one knew who a buyer's agent was. No one. People thought, and I used to look respectable. Like I had short hair, I dressed up nicely. People used to think the word buyer's agent, you're an art dealer. I had no idea what it was. Telling people you had to pay a retainer, they nearly fainted in front of you. You couldn't actually carry out a meeting with them. They nearly fainted. So I entered in that realm of time, which where you could look at me and say, I'm going to bet against this guy, he's going to fail, which a lot of people thought I was going to fail. A lot of real estate agents said I was going to fail, actually. Which is fair. I think that's a fair assessment. Because they were like, how are you going to charge a buyer? Like, why is a buyer, I work buyers. Like, why are they going to pay you? Which I think is fair. But I think what's important, right? So you can look at all this, right? Like you can look at people's assessments, like for example of me, like thinking I came from corporate. I then went and tried to wing a business, which I did. And then I saw my life change. It wasn't all glorious. It was fucking hard. But I saw how I transformed by starting a business, what it did to me personally and professionally. Starting a business was that's a pill for transformation. You want a fucking pill? But don't get ecstasy. If you want a pill for transformation, start a business. Swallow that pill. Swallow 30 of them. Triple dump. Okay? Because you have to face yourself. You have to see your vulnerabilities. You have to test yourself during hard times. You understand how it all works. A lot of people understand that. But I got a very clear experience of what it felt like for me. And so starting BAI and looping back to this discussion is, I started it as well to get people out of a 9 to 5, to get that person who thinks they're working as an engineer, that's their life purpose. That's how they've got to live on 120K. I'll show you how to make 5 mil. And so I get inspiration, going back to inspiration, not by how much money they fucking make. I get inspiration from seeing what they build, how they back themselves, the courage, the commitment, their wife joining them, like how they're challenging themselves differently, like just watching their lives transform. Because I've been doing this now for just under 5 years. Seeing those journeys is like, I'm a bit numb to it though, but like that's what, I get off on that. Like that gets me going. So that's my form of inspiration for BAI is seeing people's lives change. Not everyone's lives change. Though. People fail what I do. Not everyone's successful.
How, has that impacted you?
I'll tell you a story. So I had to be it used to piss me off seeing people not win. Yeah, so for a few years it used to piss me off. I used to then blame myself. My content's not good enough. I shouldn't have been in the group. But then a few things happened. So this is the story. There was an African guy called Sanders. He was a nurse for 30 years, and he called us up. I wasn't on the call. But it got escalated to me because the sales rep at my company, so it was like, bro, this guy's not going to cut it. Like, we shouldn't let him in. Like, we can't understand him properly. Like, he's like, they weren't being rude. They're being respectful. Like, they're operating with integrity. In my team, like, we shouldn't bring him into the group as a buyer's agent. And I spoke to him, because I wanted to talk to him. And I don't know, luckily I had the I don't know if it was intuition, whatever you want to call it. But I was like, I'm going to give this guy a go. Like, he was a property investor as well. So he wasn't, like, there was certain metrics that I was looking at that I was like, hey, I want to give this guy a go. Fast forward, like, he runs a 7-figure business. He was a nurse for 30 years. He got out of it. He's he smashed it. He's African. He services the African community in Australia. He's bought over maybe 17, 18 properties for himself. But what I learnt from that was, who am I to fucking judge these people? As you said, it's not my journey. Like, who am I to sit here and be Mr. Dictator? Like, hey, you're going to be good. You're going to be not good. Like, I've had people come to my group who own 30 properties who haven't been great buyer's agents. They think because they own all this property, they're going to be no leads, no business. So if you can't lead generate, you're gone. And if you can't consistently do that, you're gone. You can have the best research process. You can have you can be so skilled in negotiating, but if you don't have clients, you don't have a business, right? But getting back to my point, when I saw that situation unfold over about maybe an 8-month period from when I let him and I watched it, it shifted for me. It shifted for me as in, if you come into the group and it doesn't work, that's okay. I interviewed a guy recently who's a broker, mortgage broker. I interviewed him because we spoke to him and he said, he goes, I came into your program and I'm not a buyer's agent now. He goes, I never had an intention of becoming one. I just wanted to do your program. I wanted to deal with other buyers agents. I want to learn how they think. I wanted to become more skilled around buying property myself.
Wow.
I wanted to be in your community. And so I interviewed him because I was curious around that. But I think what I've started to be more okay with is that everyone's on their journey. They don't have to be a buyer's agent to win. If someone quits their job as a result of doing my program and doesn't become a buyer's agent, tick. If someone learns a skill in my program that they then develop further and that helps them become better, tick. So I got comfortable with that and okay with that after a period of time. And so I'm okay with, I know that people like who come into my program aren't going to win. That's just life. And so I've just learned to like surrender and accept that.
Powerful, man. I'm going through a process. It sounds like you're at a stage where your business, BAI, has been a great vehicle to serve you, and it was a form of inspired action which built a vehicle to help you with your lifestyle piece. But now, potentially, it's not, your investment in that isn't as day-to-day inspiring. Yes, the results are inspiring, but maybe the process of the activities isn't as maybe intrinsically inspiring as what it once was. How do you go from, do you maintain, the reason I say that is because I'm going through something similar where I've got the buyer's agency, which isn't as fulfilling day to day. It's not as inspiring. Yes, it's a great vehicle, but I'm like, now, how do I then find my next, maybe it's not about finding, it's about allowing in the next intrinsic thing. Do you still maintain the vehicle that got you there and figure out a way to remove yourself and let that sustain? Or do you believe in cutting off what no longer serves you to, it still serves, but for your scenario, for example, do you think you will keep this entity, eliminate yourself out to allow some new intrinsic activities to fall into your lap? Or is it about being proactive instead of waiting for the next intrinsic thing to come, forcing something? Like how do you perceive people that are stuck in a rut, want to find intrinsic action and succeed at the same time?
Number one, I think you've got to mitigate risk. So what does mitigate risk look like? When Steve Wozniak, who I saw at Sharma talk at the conference in Switzerland, when he started Apple with Jobs, he worked at Hewlett-Packard. So he started Apple, he co-founded Apple while working part-time at Hewlett-Packard. Phil Knight from Nike, he was an accountant when he started Nike. He mitigated his risk. He didn't just jump into Nike right away, right? There's a lot of these large companies that when they start ideas that they're not sure, especially these very large ones, obviously, like that I mentioned, they're not sure how they're going to go. And so a lot of them start not fully in at times. And I think that's okay. So I think that for me, as an example, my business runs fully outside of me, independently, completely. I've got a full senior leadership team, full team top bottom that just runs, right? So I am fortunate enough now with that specific business that I can allocate time and thinking to invite and explore other opportunities. But getting back to your question for people who could be in a rut or just is I think you've got to mitigate risk. And so to jump all in, I've seen people do that. And so it's when you ask that question, I'm like, oh, I know some people have just said, fuck it. This is not serving me. I'm cutting the cord and I'm out. And then they do what they need to do, whatever that looks like, to find the next thing. And I've seen it work for people. Is that my approach though? No. I'd hate to kind of recommend to people to go hey, cut your cord and go pursue your life dream. I'd prefer to be more methodical and be hey, don't cut the cord, keep income coming in, remain being stimulated potentially if it is somewhat stimulating, or try and work out how you can focus on a role or change what you're doing to become more stimulated, and simultaneously start to allow space to invite these opportunities and start to engage in conversations with people that you want to connect with. Start taking proactive approaches to either find that next thing, or as you said, bring in an energy field, or be around a tribe of people, or surround yourself. If you want to get into selling textiles, start hanging around textile people. Like go on LinkedIn, go find them, go talk to them, go interview them, go to conferences. Like begin that journey of you want to get into diamonds, like selling diamonds. Like go to Israel, go to South Africa, speak to people. So I think that you need to be strategic around how you do it, if you can. But there's no right or wrong answer.
I heard a saying, to do what you love, you've got to learn to love what you currently do.
True. That makes sense. Which is hard. Like, do people love what they do?
Prospecting?
I mean, I like prospecting, I have to say. Like, I like it. Like,
What's your favourite type of prospecting?
Outbound prospecting.
Wow.
I fucking love outbound.
On the phones or?
Everything. I love outbound. Like, I don't do a lot of it now because I've got a full team that dedicated to outbound and stuff. But I love outbound. Like, I fucking love it. Like, I get excited talking about it. I love the process of just like the manual nurturing someone. Like, so, I want to do business with you. What's the process look like? What's my first touch point? How am I going to add value to you? How am I going to excite you about what I'm doing or what I want from you or what I want to discuss with you? And what's that? And just taking that journey. And it could take a year or 2 years, could take 6 months, could take a week. But going to you outbound, I could find you on a LinkedIn. I could find you on somewhere else. I could email you straight away. I had someone email me today. I thought the email was quite cool. Like, they got me on LinkedIn. Obviously, they scraped me, and I could tell they got my details from LinkedIn. But I think having that first connection with someone and then bringing an opportunity to life is really cool. Like, completely cold. Like, I think that's amazing. And so I get excited with that. Like, I love sales. I fucking love it. And I didn't come from sales. And so I sucked at it. And I was terrible at it. But I do try my best around learning a lot around B2B and B2C and learning different systems. Like, I went to the US and studied Keller Williams, the largest franchise in North America, like sell side. They got buyers agents, obviously, but primarily went to their conference, met their senior leadership, learned about their model, and I think Stanford or Harvard's written papers around there because they're very profitable. They're a highly profitable model, very profitable business. I think they've got around 160,000 agents in North America. But I just get curious about certain things, and why I brought Keller Williams up is I read The One Thing. The One Thing is a book.
The One Thing.
By Gary Keller, the founder of Keller Williams. And so let me give you an example. So I was with my business coach at the time, Simon Reynolds.
Good coach?
Yeah, he's fucking brilliant. Like he helped, like he's very big in the marketing space and advertising, like helped John Simon's work, got John Simon's off the ground with Aussie, is it Aussie?
Aussie Homeloads, yeah.
Like, yeah, he's a gun. Legend, like really smart guy. Coaches very top performing CEOs around the world. So I was speaking to Simon, and this is what I got, like, this is how I get value from coaches, right? It's not just about them telling me like things in the meeting around strategy. Like I said, hey, I'm looking to like rethink the model, CH. I'm looking at like blah, 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 blah. He said, read The One Thing. Like, I think good coaches do that. Rather than like trying to prescribe something to you, they will slide you something and say, learn about it and see what that journey, then see the journey that then takes you on. So he slid The One Thing, not literally, slid the name. I wrote it down, got the book, read it on the plane going overseas. I was going to Singapore as well in that time. Went to Singapore, read the book, finished it, landed in Singapore and thought, I was on my phone as well landing, on LinkedIn, going outbound, trying to find someone in senior leadership at Keller Williams. I was so inspired by the book. I was like trying to get in contact with Gary Keller. Couldn't get his details. I was trying to scrape it off a site as well. I couldn't get it because there's sites you can scrape their emails. You can get access to anyone's email. So I couldn't find Gary Keller. So anyway, I got access to a lady called Diane. She was the global CEO of training and education at Keller Williams. So I got her details and I emailed her. She then messaged me back like pretty quick after and said, call me. So I called her and she was on vacation. They said, this is Americans for you. Like this is the land of opportunity, right? I called her, she goes, I'm on vacation in Hawaii. And then that call, then she goes, listen, I want to invite you to our conference in Orlando. So it's a 5-day conference, like everything's paid for.
What happened on the call for you to get invited?
I think I was a young guy, man. She heard my enthusiasm. She knew I just read the book and I just fucking went outbound to her and said, hey, I want to learn your systems. I just want to learn about your model. And she said, listen, come to our conference. Like we're an open book. Like we're a franchise. Like we'll show you all our stuff. You can meet our senior leaders, like our CEO and our COO, and like sit with us. And you'll hear all the high-performing agents. There were some agents doing, like, I think, 20 mil a year GCI, USD that we were listening to. And so getting back to outbound, like that's an example. Like prospecting is not around just making money. Prospecting for outbound is around developing opportunity, creating opportunity. And so I love that. And so that's just an example of someone that I went outbound to. And man, the learning I got even from Simon Reynolds, my coach, telling me to read a book, and then how that book then got me to Orlando, sitting with their CEO and COO and kind of going through that journey was fucking amazing.
Wow.
So, yeah, there's a lot out there to kind of dive into. But if you're asleep at the wheel and you're just in your shell all day, in that shell, you can miss a lot of fun stuff. But some people are okay being in the shell. I was in the shell for a long time. So I've been there. So I'm not criticising. But there's a lot of cool things happening, I think, in the world, right? There's a lot of interesting people, interesting dynamic, people building seriously like cool stuff, like businesses, like products or services that are just mind-blowing. And I think the more you look into it, because I am fascinated about business, so I look into it all. I'm just curious around what people are doing, and I research stuff. And like, it brings in humility. Like if you're generating, let's say as an example, $3 million and you think you're good, go find the 19-year-old who's got an $800 million company in the States, because you'll find it very quickly. Or in India, like you'll find it. Like, so that to me activates humility for me, like going around and looking at these young entrepreneurs, or even that example I gave you of that guy, Richard, who I was talking about earlier, who at 40 was broke and then started, like, that's like, that was inspiring. When he told me the story, I was like, oh my God. And an interesting story he told me, I'm just going back to that story, is he was an engineer, but he used to come up with new patent technologies for what he was doing, like ideas, like to patent. So he used to spend 6 months in his company going on a yacht or going around the world. Like he was like an adventurer. So like he wasn't the type of guy who's flying just around jets and all that type of shit. Like he was like a thrill seeker. So he would spend 6 months of the year going around the world doing crazy shit to think of these ideas. And he'd then come up with like 3 of them, and he'd fly back to San Francisco, bring in the whole like hundreds and hundreds of engineers. And he'd say, guys, these are the ideas, let's build them. And so there's just people doing really interesting and fascinating stuff. And you just got to step in and learn about it. And then it brings you back down to normality around what you're currently doing. For me.
It's an interesting point you said, is bringing yourself back down to like a normality. I'm now quite fascinated with, have you explored any of John DeMartine's work?
Lightly.
I'm fascinated with people that can balance perception, where we often look at people on pedestals or below us, and it's about balancing perception so that you're back at a center point and you can look at things objectively, or the foundation of reality, before making a decision. And yeah, just the point of seeking people like that brings you back to humility, I found interesting.
Yeah, because the ego is tricky. We've all got like typically quite strong egos, some less than others. And when you think you're good enough or you're too good, it's good to look at other people who are doing better.
Mm.
And I think it also then lifts your standards. You're like, hey, I thought that was good. No. Like, it's actually not that good, maybe. And so it also can be a bit, not humiliating, but it can be a bit harsh as well. Because when you think you're on top of the world, doing something and achieving a certain number, whatever metric you're kind of defining as that success metric for you, and then you see what that goes back to comparing. But if you come from a place of curiosity rather than compare and observation, and you're just observing, you move a lot of what you move. You can move from entitlement to radical humility.
Entitlement.
Shift. That's the game. You shift from entitlement. We're all very entitled. Like, fucking expect our coffee now. Hey, get out of my parking spot. Like, hey, be here now. Like, we're super entitled, right? And so when you can shift from entitlement to radical humility, I think it's power.
Fuck, man. That is powerful. I can sit and I get not distracted. I can sit and listen. I get so immersed with when you speak that then you lose train of where we're going. But how much of the success you've acquired would you say is spiritually related, or is just the result of you following a science approach of here's what the result or the outcome we're looking for, here's a plan reverse engineered to get there?
I mean, I think spirituality has a different interpretation for everyone. It could involve religion. It could involve introspection. Like, I think spirituality, I'm introspective. Like, I want to learn about my insecurities. I want to learn about how I can become better. I want to learn about how to become more aware, more conscious. I want to be the best version of myself, and I'm committed to that. Like, not just about getting stronger, for example, or making more money. Like, I want to become the best human being I can be, which takes a lot of fucking work, right? I think. Like, it's a life practice, and we'll never even get there. And so, for me, I'm on that journey of just becoming the best version of myself. And so, getting back to the science stuff, like, I used to be like that. Everything needs to be like, hey, it needs to work this style of formula. Like, not like hypothetically when I say formula, like, it needs to be like in a linear style of way. And now I'm more chilled. Like, last quarter, as an example, I didn't hit what I wanted to do last quarter. Like, for part of the business, I didn't hit what I was anticipating, what I forecast to hit for my numbers. Typically, I was buried for a bit. There was a day or two. It was like I was fucking mourning. Like, if you saw me, you'd actually think. So I'm not perfect. Like, I'm still working through it. Yeah. Because I had an addiction to work before, and so it's not done yet. But if you looked at me for 2 days, you'd think someone died. I swear. Like, I wouldn't talk to you. I was very upset. But I flipped pretty quick. Like, 2 days is a very long time. Very long time. But I'm getting a lot better at it. So, for example, like, I'm okay with that now. And I got okay after. I was like, I'm going to make it up. I know I'll make it up. I've got the financial year to make it up. But even if I don't, I'm okay. Like, things do go down and up. And so it's a bit like, water. It just flows. And sometimes it just changes temperature. Sometimes it's more fast. But I guess now I go with the flow more. There's a book called The Surrender Experiment.
The Surrender Experiment.
It's next level. So this guy, I haven't read it for a while, but quick high level. This dude thought, I'm just going to surrender I'm going to basically just like surrender into everything in the day. Like, whatever, like, I'm not going to have an agenda. Just going to surrender. Like, if I met you at the beach and you said, like, hey, let's go for a surf, I'd be like, okay, surrender to that. Like, so he went on a quest to surrender. Cut a long story short, he then built like a few $billion company in a jungle, like an IT company. I forget how it all worked, but like it led him into like a forest, and he built. It was like a few billion. That was a long time ago. So like I don't know. It could be worth like 10 billion.
Is that
today.
Michael Seeger?
Yeah.
There you go.
So, I'm not following that approach, obviously, but it's more of a concept.
Combination.
Like I'm just trying to like be like, okay, like acceptance, like that thing didn't work out, and so I'm trying to work in that dynamic more. And I've got a plan, and the plan can deviate, but we'll see what happens. You know what I mean? And I'll look at opportunities when they come to me during that plan, and if they excite me, I'll deviate from the fucking plan. I'll change direction. So before I was more fixed. It's like no, like this is how it needs to work, and more structured, heaps structured, very structured. I've got less structure now. Works for me.
Do you feel less structure? Is there discipline in having less structure?
I think you need more discipline.
More discipline.
I think you need more discipline for me. So what do I mean by that? Is by having less structure, it can be mentally exhausting because you feel like, especially being structured, it's like, oh, I should be doing this. Oh, I'm becoming lazy. Oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, like I won't get this result. And so I think there's an element of like you need belief, you need faith that, hey, things are going to work out. But I think you need discipline to then not deviate and go back to implementing structure, serious structure. I think there's a heavy amount of discipline and diligence around not caving in and reverting back to your old self.
Interesting. So either way, there's discipline required.
I think it's discipline with everything. Like if you've got a relationship with your love partner, there's discipline in improving that, and there's discipline in committing if you wanted to improve that. Like you've got to apply discipline to, you want to become more healthier, you've got to look at your nutrition. There's discipline around then eating certain foods. There's a discipline around learning about, like I told you about coffee, like most people don't know that most coffee beans are fucking toxic. Like really toxic. There's a discipline in wanting to, like there's a curiosity around learning about it, but there's a discipline around like studying it. And and so I think we need a strong element of discipline in our lives for sure, like around what we do. Especially if you want to be a high performer.
What's been the most profound experience of your life? And then we can wrap up. I appreciate all your time on this.
The most profound experience. That's a deep question. That's a deep question.
We're in Byron Bay.
Yeah, I know.
What's the first thing that comes to mind when I say that? Hypothetically, just something that came to mind.
Getting my first cat.
Getting your first cat. Walk me through it.
So when I got my first cat, Mishka, who's passed.
Sorry to hear.
Thanks, brother. Yeah. So I was a workaholic then. And so I was so identified with work at that stage of my life that everything was work. So it was more important than relationships, everything. Work. For me, it was. So when I got my first cat, it just changed my perspective on life. And I know sounds a bit strange, but I just started to feel into affection more, compassion more, I was less selfish. I had to look after the cat. I was very selfish before. It was all about me. Love. So it was a big shifting experience for me. Even though I had like a love partner at the time, getting the cat, I think, was just a fucking game changer for just broadening my senses around life. As crazy as it sounds, hey? Like, so I'd say that was one of the most profound experiences.
There you go.
Getting a cat, eh? Who would think getting a cat?
Interesting. Well, it sounds like it allowed emotions or perspectives to surface.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
And then I guess when you're in those frequencies more presently, it attracts more like.
I think so.
Man, this has been a phenomenal podcast for me. It probably wouldn't be an interesting podcast for the listeners, to be honest. I mean, most real estate people that are in there, I got a lot out of this. I was very selfish as opposed to asking the typical real estate questions. That's what I mean by that. But I really appreciate your time because it was really enjoyable to take a different route than the average podcast we do. So thank you so much for sharing and being open to share.